Just how good is FSR? Well, in today's video, we're going to find out just how good it is. In Cyberpunk 2077, Dead Island 2, and The Last of Us Part 1, the new one, on this system with the 1080. Oh, this is going to be a good one. Okay, let's go over the system we've got. So we've got a 3800X Ryzen 7 3800X, not the XT version, this is just an X. We've got 16 gig of DDR4 4000 megahertz RAM there. And then we've obviously got the 1080, which we showed in the previous video. If you haven't watched that, then obviously go and check that one out as well. And you can see some more games with that system on a slightly lesser system with the Ryzen 5 3600 that was with. But we're up in the game a little bit with an 8-core CPU, 16-thread CPU, and the 1080. And again, we're going to be doing 4K, 1440p, 1080p, if you would run it at 1080p. And we're just going to see how it performs with and without FSR. So the three games that we have picked for this particular video all support FSR, whether it be FSR 1, 2, or 2.1. So different variations of that technology. And it's interesting to see how it's improved actually. So what does FSR actually stand for? Well, it stands for Fidelity Super Resolution. It's basically AMD's version of the DLSS, which is a upscaling technology which renders the game at a lower resolution, then kind of upscales it to make the frame rate higher and make it look, in some cases, actually sharper than native resolution. As of July the 14th, 2023, there are a total of 140 games that support FSR, whether that be FSR 1, 2 or 2.1. You can actually find out what games support that by checking out the link in the video description, and that will take you straight to the AMD website. That list is growing. It is growing very, very slowly, but it is growing, and that's a good thing. So what graphics cards actually support AMD's FSR? So as you can see on the screen, the GeForce 10 series, which is what we're using today, 16 series, RTX 20, RTX 30 series, AMD Ryzen mobile processors with Radeon graphics, which is really interesting, that's great to see. The AMD Radeon RX 480, 470, 460, basically anything from that era up to current day. So we're going to start with Cyberpunk 2077 and let's see how that performs with and without FSR at 1080, 1440p, and of course 4K. Before we get started, let's check what settings we're actually using. Okay, so we've got everything set to ultra. Now, unrealistic that is on a 1080, but we're going to try it anyway because science. So we've got FSR is actually off too, so that changes back to custom, which is to be expected. No super resolution of any kind, and everything is set to high and ultra, as you can see there. No ray tracing because obviously the 10 series does not support ray tracing. And we are going to turn motion blur off because I do not play games with motion blur. And we are running windowed borderless because I am screen capturing this as well. And we're running at 4K basically. HDR is off, NVIDIA Reflex is on. All right, here we are in the Osaka headquarters, I believe. And already it's not looking good at 4K without any FSR or anything like that. 15 frames per second with 7 FPS on the 1% and 4 on the 0.1% lows there. That is awful. Now we're running this graphics card. It's got 3 different modes: overclock, normal and silent. Obviously we're not going to be running it silent because that would not be ideal for what we're doing with it right now. So we're going to switch to, actually let's just go up here and then we'll switch it to overclock. Where am I going? Oh, nowhere. I've just gone round in a circle. Okay, I think we've got to go out. All right, so while we're traveling to wherever it is we're going, I'm going to change it to OC mode. Now, you have to use the MSI Gaming app to do that. There's no switch on the graphics card or anything like that on the 1080, on this 1080 anyway. So currently we're in gaming mode, but we're going to change that to OC mode, which applies a kind of inbuilt overclock to it. Basically takes it up to 1961 is what it looks like. You can see it's applied a plus 26 megahertz on the core clock and a plus 50 on the memory clock. quite a modest overclock actually. I'm pretty sure that we could probably push that higher if we wanted to. So actually, what we're going to do, we are going to push that up a bit higher, just to see what difference it makes before we start playing around with FSR. So let's take the core clock up to, try and make it up to 2000 if we can, or thereabouts. Okay, 2037 with a memory clock. From experience, memory clock is the one that you need to watch. If you push that too far, it'll just outright crash. Okay, I'm not noticing much difference really, other than the power usage has definitely gone up. So now we're outside, yeah, it's apparent that frames have definitely dropped. I can see why most people do their benchmarks running around and driving around and stuff like that. It's obviously harder for it to work out. So yeah, we got down to about 12 frames per second there. Our 1% low has dropped to 10 now. Not exactly great. So let's go on and reduce the resolution down to 1440p, 256 by 1440. Again, no FSR. Okay, so we've changed the resolution to 256 by 1440, and we've changed it to full screen because for some reason in this game it shrunk the screen on the 4K display. So let's go ahead and see how it goes with that. 28 so far, still not hitting that 30 FPS that we all at least want to hit when we're playing games as a minimum. So our instant FPS is on the left here, our average FPS is on the right, so the average should start creeping up possibly. So we have arrived at Lizzie's bar and just teetering on that 30 FPS at 1440p. This is without any FSR or anything like that. So let's drop down to 1080p and see how that does. I think it's not going to look particularly amazing at 1080p. There we go. But it should increase our FPS quite a bit, obviously. So yeah, there we go, doubled almost, 40 FPS or thereabouts. But it's not looking great. So we are going to go back up to 4K and enable FSR. Okay, so this is 4K with FSR enabled at the lowest setting, basically ultra performance I think it's called. Still around the 40 FPS mark there, and you can already see on the screen there that it's not great. Although we're still getting our 40 FPS or thereabouts, it doesn't look amazing. In fact, I think it probably looks worse than it did a moment ago. It's very, very fuzzy in the distance over there. You can't really see much going on, so it definitely has an impact on what it looks like, obviously. So what we're going to do, we're actually going to increase that to balanced. Keep FSR 2.1 enabled. So we've now got it set to balanced mode, which is kind of it's balanced. It's a mix between low and high, I guess. And you can still see it's not exactly very clear at 4K, and we are getting just under 20 FPS, which isn't great, to be honest with you. But don't forget, we are at 4K. It's probably pushing it a little bit for this card. But if we were to go higher than that, let's set it to quality, which I think is the highest one we can do. Yeah, we've got sharpening at 50% basically, so we'll just leave it at that and apply that quality setting, and let's see what we get. So it's only dropped a few frames, about 5 frames a second there, still not great. Does look a bit clearer, the lasers definitely look much sharper, and in the distance there where the bar is on the right hand side there, you can see that's definitely a lot sharper than it was before, but at the cost of pretty poor FPS there. Okay, so we are now set at 1440p resolution in game, and FSR is enabled at ultra performance mode. Again, ultra performance isn't great. I wouldn't really pick that one. If you can run it higher than that, I would definitely run it higher than that. As you can see, it's really, really fuzzy again in the distance there. In fact, almost everything is quite fuzzy actually. Not great clarity, if I'm honest, but frames per second there, we're nearly at 60. So that is quite good to see. What we're going to do though is change that back to balanced. So we're definitely over our 30 FPS mark there. Moving around, it's way smoother. That is for sure. So this is at 1440p, 2560 by 1440p in Cyberpunk on a 1080. Again, we do lose some of the clarity in the distance over there, and yeah, it's quite kind of fuzzy, but there's a trade-off between being able to play the game and having super clear graphics on the screen. You kind of have to trade off. one or the other. So this is set to balanced. Let's go and change this to ultra now and just see how clear it can be with FSR set to quality. Actually not bad. I think that looks all right. That's actually not bad. The bar over there is definitely a lot clearer now. The lasers are still a little bit fuzzy. We're definitely over our 30 FPS, which is kind of where you want to be really. I wouldn't really want to play less than 30 FPS for a smooth gaming experience. I'd say that's all right, and that's at quality setting with FSR 2.1 at 1440p. Not bad at all. Now, just for fun, we're going to try it at a 1080p resolution. Okay, so we're back at 1080p without any FSR enabled. I just wanted to remind you and show you what it looks like before we enable FSR. So as you can see there, the lasers are not particularly great. The bar is really fuzzy again. Pretty much everything is almost fuzzy. Not quite as bad as what ultra performance is with FSR enabled, but you get the idea. This is native 1080p. So let's enable FSR at ultra performance mode again, and a considerable jump up with the frames there. Everything again is also fuzzy as we would expect it to be in ultra performance mode. 70 up to 70 there, just under 70 let's say. Super smooth but really poor visual quality, not great. Okay, this is balanced FSR at 1080p, and I'll be honest with you, it's definitely better than ultra performance. The bar name on the right hand side there is definitely more readable now. The lasers are looking a lot better actually. Fairly stable, 50 FPS or thereabouts. Doesn't really handle these patterns here as we move further away. They look kind of rubbish to be honest, but it's super smooth. All right, 1080p FSR quality enabled. Only a slight drop from our frame rate that we had just a moment ago. Still 47, nearly 50. Looking a lot sharper in the distance over there. The laser lights are looking a lot sharper as well, and absolutely playable FPS, which is what you want. Definitely looks much better. So you could absolutely play at quality with FSR enabled. All right, I think we're going to switch over to Dead Island 2 now and just see how that compares with the same resolutions with and without FSR. Okay, so Dead Island 2 now, and just to show you the settings that we're using currently, we're at 4K again, full screen, no VSync enabled, so you will see tearing on the screen. Motion blur is off as always. And that's pretty much it. I think everything is set to ultra now. And let's just make sure FSR is currently off, and we're going to run it native. See how it looks. Right, here we are, Dead Island 2, and at 4K. Not great frame rate, we've got 25 showing up there. Let's get some of these in a minute. Yeah, so not amazing. And it's quite difficult to aim at that frame rate. Definitely wouldn't want to play it at this. That is for sure. It's... yeah, well, you can see on the screen how bad that looks. So what we're going to do, we're going to run away quickly. Just panning around, you can see that it's just not great. So we're getting less than 20 frames per second there. Let's change that to FSR enabled before they come and get me. Okay, so we've had to set FSR to performance. It doesn't have ultra performance, so that's just going to have to do for this. All right, let's apply that. Go back into the game and see what we get. Oh wow, that is a lot different. Although, is there input delay there? Might be a slight input delay using FSR on this game. This is something we saw in previous video actually, in one of the other games that we played. There was definite input delay when FSR was enabled. So there we go. That is a considerable improvement in this game using FSR. Depends on the implementation, how good it is. Obviously FSR 1 is going to be totally different to FSR 2 and 2.1. It's improving all the time. Oh, hello. Yeah, that is nice. That is much better. So that was actually set to performance. Let's see if we can make that look a little bit better by doing balanced. In fact, let's go straight up to quality and see how it looks. Oh yeah, that's a big drop down. So 20 to 30 FPS there, kind of back where we were almost. Not great, but it does look really, really good actually. So, oh, I'm about to get bitten. Okay, so we're now set to balanced, and it's definitely an improvement. It's frame rate's obviously gone up, and it still looks quite good, to be honest with you. I don't really notice much difference. Definitely over that 30 FPS mark that we like to be at for most of our games. But don't forget, we've got everything set to ultra. Everything in the game is set to ultra, so we can improve that even more just by changing some of the normal settings that you would change if you were trying to improve your performance. So we can just change the overall quality down to high and see what difference that makes. That should make quite a bit of difference. So let's go back into the game. Oh yeah, already feeling a bit smoother. FPS up to about 40 or so. Definitely feeling a lot more playable now, even though it's only between 30 and 40 still. Don't forget, all that was at 4K. So let's take it down to, let's do 1440p, 256 by 1440 as we did a moment ago, and let's just turn off FSR because we need to see what it's like without that enabled. Okay, so just 1440p native, no upscaling technology enabled there, and we're already over 60 FPS at 1440p without all that fancy stuff. So already it's actually really, really impressive and well above our 30 FPS that we like to be at. And mouse is feeling a lot more responsive without FSR enabled. So there's definitely some sort of delay there going on with the mouse on this system anyway. But yeah, really, really responsive, looks nice and clear as you'd expect. And yeah, we're pretty much hitting our 60 FPS target there, which is really, really good to see. So let us, just because why not, turn on FSR, because that's, after all, that is why we're here. So we're going to go straight to quality because the frame rate is already really, really good. So let's just see what boost we get with that. You can see there in the menus we've got 70, so that's a 10 FPS improvement already just by enabling that. See what it is actually in the game. So yeah, it's nearly 80, almost 80. Still smooth, don't really notice much difference. There's not much delay in the mouse as there was in ultra performance or performance, because this game of course doesn't have ultra performance mode. Yeah, absolutely fine. I mean, there would be actually no reason to enable FSR in this game at this resolution because it already runs it really, really well. And this is a game that came out this year. But we don't want to stop there. So we're going to change it to performance and see what improvement we get in our FPS. If you're looking for those really, really high FPS numbers, this is kind of what you can expect on this kind of system at 1440p with FSR performance mode enabled. Nearly 100 FPS, holy moly. 95 currently. Our average will creep up now. I don't think there's any more zombies around now, but again, super smooth. Honestly, don't notice that much difference really as it is at this moment in time. Let's see if I can get them to come over this way to the power cables. And because we can, although you wouldn't really do this because it actually runs quite well, but if you haven't got a 1440p monitor and you do actually need to run it at 1080p, then we have to show you. Yeah, we're back up to nearly 90 FPS there, nearly 100 FPS in fact, at 1080p. I'm not gonna lie, it actually looks quite good at 1080p. Not as clear as 1440 or 4K, obviously there's less pixels on the screen, but it's totally, it looks fine. Honestly, it looks fine. And this is without FPS, this is without FSR enabled. So this is the kind of experience that you can expect with the 1080 in Dead Island 2. They're going to get electrocuted now, because that is what I wanted. So let's do what we always do, turn FSR on. We'll just set it straight to quality, I think. There we go. Now, one thing I have noticed is that when we go between off, if you just look on the screen, I'll put it up on the screen now, you can see here where the mouse pointer is moving around. This area here, watch this area. When I enable FSR 2, when I set it to quality, just look at this area. We've now got more going on here. Don't quite know what that is actually meant to be, but there's definitely more detail there, which is quite interesting. So about 10 FPS or so frame FPS difference there, I reckon. Don't notice much difference in the actual quality. Maybe a little bit sharper, but not that much really. But it's not really... yeah, if it's running the game already at a good frame rate, you wouldn't really enable FSR in a game like this anyway. Anyway, let's move on to The Last of Us Part 1 and just see how that performs at the same resolutions. Okay, so The Last of Us Part 1, just to go through the graphic settings before we actually show you the game. Again, we're at 4K, we start with 4K. We've had to go to medium settings because this card is only an 8 gig card. We can't actually go to high or ultra because, as you can see on the screen, it's using more RAM than what we've got available, so that could actually cause it to crash, which we obviously don't want. So we're only a tiny little bit over there, so I'm hoping that medium settings will work. Now this is 4K without FSR enabled, so this is part way through, well, not that far into the game actually. And yeah, native 4K in this game, quite demanding, to be honest. This is everything set to medium, the default medium preset, so we haven't changed any other settings, everything is medium basically. And yeah, we're getting around the same, well, not great FPS there, less than 30 anyway. Okay, so about 25 FPS there. So we're going to enable FSR and we're going to set that to, let's see if it does ultra performance. This one does do ultra performance, so let's try it at that first, see how well it does. Already in the menus there, we've jumped up to nearly 50 before we've even gone into the game itself. Oh wow, that is a big difference. Quality wise, I'm not really seeing a huge amount of difference there at this moment in time in kind of visual quality. Obviously you could go in deep on the actual pixel quality, if you will, but if you're just playing it, you're not going to care about that kind of thing, to be honest with you. From this, it looks absolutely fine, and we're about 50 FPS at 4K in this game. Now again, we've got VSync off, so you're going to see tearing on the screen, but moving around absolutely fine, nearly 50 FPS. So let's see how we can improve the visual quality. So interestingly, when we've enabled FSR and changed it from balanced to from ultra performance to balanced, we can see the memory allocation there. It's already lower than what it was a moment ago. It's actually rendering it at 720, 1280 by 720, and upscaling it to 4K at ultra performance. And I didn't really notice any visual quality difference from native 4K. That's, you've got to admit, that's pretty impressive from AMD to kind of do something like that. It's crazy, and use less RAM as well. So what we're going to do, we're going to go to balance, which then renders it at 2264 by 1272 for some reason, and let's see what that one is like. So we dropped down about 10 FPS, I reckon, but visually wise, again, I honestly don't really notice that much difference in this particular area. The clothes hanging on the line at the back there look really, really sharp. Hopefully you can see that on the video as well, on the recording. It just looks great. It looks great. We're getting a bit of a hit on FPS there, but that's going to happen when we increase the quality in the FSR. But it's using less RAM. Okay, so quality changes it to 2560 by 1440p, and we're at 4K, so it's rendering it at 1440p and upscaling it to 4K basically. So we're going to apply that setting. We'll just verify that we are actually outputting the display resolution is set to 4K and rendering at 1440p. Really, really interesting to see that comparison there. Not all games show the actual render resolution. So yeah, we've definitely dropped. We're definitely above our 30 FPS, or okay, we just dropped there, but we're not far off. Still playable, although I obviously prefer more frames in this game. Getting tearing on the screen, as I said, VSync is off, so we will get the tearing. But again, visually, I'm not really noticing a lot of difference, to be honest with you. All right, so let us go down to native 1440p and see what it's like. So this is native 1440p with no FSR enabled. And actually, just looking again, sorry, going back to these clothes hanging on the washing line, they're definitely not as sharp as they were with FSR enabled. So it really does make everything sharper, but then that it is designed to do that. You don't want everything sharp, but it just looks a lot better. Personally, I think that's a really good thing. And it's about 40 FPS roughly. So not really, I mean, it definitely looks fuzzier at native 1440p. So I think I would actually turn FSR on for that reason, just to make it sharper. So as you can see, our screen resolution is set to 1440p as we just said, but the rendering resolution is actually a lot less. It's 1712 by 960, which is quite a considerable difference actually. So we've got FSR enabled and we've got it set to quality because the frames per second at native 1440p weren't really that bad, to be honest with you. And in this game, it's actually set it to 35% sharpening. So let's just have a look. So we're already above 50 in this area. And I've got to say, those clothes are looking definitely a lot sharper. I think what I'm going to do is increase the sharpness up to 50, because that, I think, is what most of the other games were set at by default. So let's up that one to 50, just to keep the comparison as close as we possibly can. Yeah, not really noticing a lot of difference there. Our frame rate really hasn't changed that much, but still very, very good at quality setting on FSR at 1440p. Just for comparison, I'm going to change FSR to the lowest setting basically, which is ultra performance. And we already know from the other games that we've looked at, ultra performance looks awful, to be honest with you. But in this game, it's definitely fuzzier. It's definitely fuzzier. But then we got that with native 1440p as well, didn't we? It was definitely a lot fuzzier. So this is kind of like native 1440p. Clothes are fuzzy, buildings fuzzy, the windows are kind of fuzzy in the distance up the top there, right in the middle of the screen that you can see now. But obviously the frame rate is a lot higher. We're now at 80 FPS. Okay, we're looking up at the sky, but FSR is just an amazing technology. Okay, just for a sanity check, I've just changed it back to quality at 1440p, so that the rendering resolution is obviously a lot lower than that, and it just looks a lot clearer. The windows up there are looking, I think, a lot clearer. The edging around the inside of the windows are a lot clearer, so it definitely makes a difference there. And we're still above 50 as we were earlier. Now, I'm not going to move from this area just so we can keep the comparison the same. So what we're going to do, drop it down to 1080p, because again, if you don't have a monitor that supports 1080p, 1440p or 4K, then your only resolution is going to be most likely 1080p. It is still the most popular resolution according to a Steam survey. So this is native 1080p. Oh, that's extremely fuzzy. Nearly hitting that 60 FPS target there. And everything is just super fuzzy. Windows are really, really fuzzy there. Not particularly great, but really, really smooth frame rate. Super smooth as we pan around. But yeah, not very clear. So that's where FSR comes in once again. And we're going to turn that on. So native 1080p there, you can see there the display resolution and the render resolution is the same until we enable FSR, which is what we're going to do now. So the FSR quality setting, sharpening is set to 50, and let's just double check our resolutions here. So 1920 by 1080, and the render resolution that the game is actually rendering in is 1280 by 720. Can you imagine playing a game at 720p? No, I can't. So this is a 720p rendered game upscaled to 1080. And already the windows are looking a lot sharper there. The frames per second obviously have gone up to nearly 80 there, which is still absolutely playable indeed. And the clothes aren't as sharp as they were in 1440p or 4K, but still very, very smooth. Very impressive technology, that is for sure. So there we go, you've seen 3 games with the 1080 on a 3800X. Not a new system by any means, but it's what we've got, so that's what we're kind of using at the moment in time. That is kind of a test bench there. But you've seen 3 quite modern games: Cyberpunk 2077, Dead Island 2, and The Last of Us Part 1. All very impressive with FSR enabled at certain resolutions. And I did say it would kind of blow your mind, and it's kind of blown my mind, the technology. This is pretty much to use on any graphics card from GTX 10 series up. Don't know if it would work on a 1050 or anything like that. Maybe that's something we can try actually. Comment down below if you want me to try same games again, but on the GT 1050, not the TI, just the 1050 with 2 gig of RAM. Do you think we should give that a go? I don't know, comment down below and just tell me if you want to see that, if that would be something you would be interested in seeing. I'm more than happy to do it because it's quite cool technology, and I'd love to see how it performs on an older card. But yeah, that's the kind of thing that you can expect on a 1080 with this system, 3800X and 16 gig of RAM. Really, really impressive. If you can get yourself a 4K monitor, you've got quite a nice gaming system here for not a lot of money. And if you want to see how much this card actually costs, then go and check out the video. As I said earlier in this video, go and click on the link and you can see exactly how much that cost. It's a really, really good bargain. Anyway, that's going to do it for me, and we'll see you in the next video. Hope you liked it. Catch you next time.